Canby Urban Renewal Agency special meeting of February 12th, 2014. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please remain standing for a moment of silence for our armed forces and those in foreign service in combat way. All right, please be seated. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Sure, let me get the words out of my mouth this evening. I motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the minutes from the January 8th, 2014 Urban Renewal meeting.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda, which contains the approval of the minutes from January 8th, 2014. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And it carries. Next, we have citizen input. I don't have any yellow cards filled out. Do we have any citizen input tonight? And Bob says no, and Walt says no. Sue, do you have announcements?
I do, and I gave you a revised copy of the announcements that was in the agenda, or in the packet. So ODOT has a contractor working on 99E signal improvements. These will be at Elm, Grant, and Ivy Streets, and that work was supposed to begin this week and expected to wrap up this summer. So construction updates are available at www.tripcheck.com. City offices will be closed on Monday, February 17th for President's Day. Canby Area Transit will operate on its regular schedule, though, and the Canby Swim Center will have a special public swim from 1 to 3 p.m. on President's Day. And the little ad there is the gentleman with the pink cake. Happy birthday to the city of Canby, which turns 121 this Saturday. The city was incorporated on February 15th, 1893. That's it.
Very good. Thank you, Sue. Next, we have new business. First item on new business is discussion on the need for a concept rendering for the Civic Center and Library. We've had a little bit of discussion in the past couple of months about, as we go to the polls with our ballot measure, as to whether the Urban Renewal Agency should construct a civic center and library, as to whether we should have some collateral information, like a drawing demonstrating the location of the center, its rough size, height, and so forth. Some commissioners have talked to me about that. Some have thought that's a pretty good idea because people like to be able to vote on something concrete, something they can picture. They like to know you have a plan about where it is, how big it is. Other commissioners have said, you know, we're trying to settle an ideological question here, so let's not detract from that with project specifics. And there's merit both ways. You know, you can argue that in some cases, folks will be more likely to vote yes or no because they don't like the concept drawn in. On the other hand, you can argue people will be more likely to vote yes on a question and no because they don't like the drawing, or yes because they do. So tonight we just wanted to have a free discussion about that, settle the question, and go on from there. Did you have anything you wanted to say, Rick?
Just that I have talked to one person, and I'll remain nameless, but I got a price from him, but I don't want to get that out right now too. Depending on your discussion, you may want to go out to other contractors, other providers, so I don't want to put that number out there just yet, but it depends on what your discussion might be. So in case we want to go for a competitive bid, we would want to make sure that we didn't influence anybody with the numbers that I've gotten so far.
You bet. So, thoughts on the question? Feel free.
Go ahead.
We'll give it to Ken.
Okay, at our meeting for the Planning Commission, I think it was Tuesday or Monday night, and they, as part of their discussion, they brought up this matter of possible amendment to the city code on a two-story versus one-story within the commercial, downtown commercial. And so they're going to be talking this over next, I think at the next meeting, before the next meeting, and then they're supposed to bring a presentation in March and decide whether they're going to, vote one way or the other to present it to the council. So this is something that we probably need to consider, how we're going to approach the design of the building, because we have to have, if we're going to have some kind of concept that we're going to present, do we do it from a one-story presentation to a two-story, or two-story and open space like we were going to do here on 2nd Avenue with the vaulted ceilings and this? It looks like maybe 2 stories, but it's still open space, one story. And so that was something that I thought, we need to consider in the presentation. And then I was thinking we're looking for an architectural concept to kind of present. And, we have the drawings from the one that we were going to do here on 2nd Avenue. That would be the open vaulted part. And we're going to be doing this, I assume, in 2 or 3 stages. We don't have the finances to do the whole thing. So this was just something that I thought we need to think about.
Yeah, very good. And for the audience, I've talked with our city attorney about the idea of having a concept drawing go out with the ballot measure. And basically, where he is and where our URA administrator are, is that the law requires that if we do such a thing, it has to be objective and factual. It also has to be disclaimed as just a concept rendering, because obviously the whole design of the Civic Center and Library is a public process, and at best all we could communicate is really location and rough size. And, anything much beyond that and some windows gets a little dicey. So this would have to stay at that level if that's the desire of the commission tonight to go forward with that. Another interesting point that I've advised our commission about already is that the law does not allow a drawing to be included in the explanatory statement of a ballot measure. We did talk to the Secretary of State's office. All of Oregon's law is in terms of using words and word count in an explanatory statement. So their interpretation is no drawings. Now, obviously, we do get drawings whenever there's an annexation measure on the ballot, but it has its own specific body of law. So we would not be including a drawing in the actual voter's pamphlet. Can't be done. So just make sure everybody knew that as we talk, so that makes sense.
Thank you, sir. I was just going to say, one of the things that's very helpful, and you do a great job as a representative giving us updates on CUP, is when you talk about some of the upgrades that they're doing and how that's going to bring about more efficiencies. You kind of are painting a picture in our minds with the way you're describing that. And so I think one of the things that could be helpful is there's elements of a well-designed home, and there's elements, I'm sure, of a well-designed library in the civic building. And I think, if we look at that plan that was put forth, there's undoubtedly some great points in that you'd want to have in a well-designed library. And so I think when we talk about efficiencies, that's very appealing to me. And, maybe we talk about what is our objective in this, and, what's in it for our citizens. Those are the things that appeal to me.
Great. Let's go on down the line, Tracy.
Well, we've kind of already answered the question whether or not a drawing could be included, so that was good that you
In the
checked that out.
explanatory
In the explanatory statement. It is, to Ken's point, the Planning Commission reviewing the second story provision in the code, I don't see as having an impact on this project, since we're already talking about a 2-floor building that would consolidate services. So whether they take that provision out or not, it doesn't mean we can't have a two-story building. And that's what we're talking about. We've included that in our ballot language that we've been consolidating. I think we've illustrated our concept well in the language that we've chosen. I don't know. I'm thinking that we don't have enough details yet to be putting any kind of rendering together, and that we really just need to talk about the ideology of should we spend the money on a civic building or go to the project list. It's an either-or question. I don't know that we really need the details that we don't have yet. I mean, I don't want to be putting out a rendering and then have people think that to be concrete, because as you mentioned, people like to vote on something concrete. We don't have anything concrete to offer yet, and I don't want to get us in another position where we're saying this is what we're going to do, and then something changes and we can't provide what we've drawn. And I think we should have more details hammered out before we go that step.
I agree. No matter how many disclaimers you put on the drawing, people are going to always look at it and think, well, why doesn't it look like what you guys showed us originally? It's going to be months down the line. There's a lot of design that's going to be taking place. I like renderings in construction because I can get a visual of what I'm going to build, but I think there's still way too much to be decided on how it's going to look, the finishes, whether you're doing brick or stucco or whatever you're going to do on the outside of the building. Who knows what's going to happen? So I'm not sure that helps us.
Chairman, question for you. So if we were to do drawings of any kind, it cannot be included in the voter's panel?
It cannot. We would have to rely
But
on.
it could be in the media.
It can be in the media, it can be in social media, it can be in the Canby Herald.
Okay.
It can be flyers,
Okay.
but not the voters' panel.
But those renderings could be things that are, if the media is reporting on it, so that, Ray comes to any public process that we're doing to do the design, he could report on that design and have it take shape in the paper as it's taking shape versus saying, this is what we're voting on.
That's correct, as the public process
And I
proceeds.
think that might be the way to go, is let it unfold in the public process and let the drawings develop as the plan develops.
Are we, it seems like we're kind of the cart before the horse a little bit. I mean, I don't think we're going to be talking design with an architect or anybody until there's a vote, so I wouldn't think we would.
Right. The best we could do is communicate rough size and location.
Right. I think as showing rough size as far as maybe an idea what we're thinking for the library size, maybe how much for a common area, maybe, and how much for the city offices upstairs or wherever they're going to be, it will give a pretty good visual. And obviously, we want it to fit in downtown Canby, so yeah, I think it's where I'd come in on that.
Okay.
Todd, Chairman Roach, to your, kind of what you're talking about is that, pardon me, I don't know the name of the diagram, but where it's got everything kind of spaced. That's something that could be put together as a potential, as a piece for conversation or a drawing. Maybe not a drawing of what the building looks out, but a layout of.
Well, floor plan?
Floor plan layout. I mean, that could be something that perhaps, as we get closer to, and once we get the price down and the aspects of the design, or square foot, the footprint of it, and we can then go look at, maybe that could be an aspect that we talk about or try to put out as an option for conversation, or at least people get an idea of what we're talking about in terms of floor plan or where pieces would go. I don't know, I mean, as a suggestion versus the whole outside look and what people may not make love onto.
Well, then you need to include, I mean, if we're going to start doing layout and stuff, then I think the library board and the people who are actually going to be in the library need to be involved in that.
And as far as the public is concerned, since we don't own the property, we're negotiating.
We still.
We can't do anything about discussing where this layout is going to be, what it's going to entail as far as the street area or, anything like that. That kind of limits us in what we can really describe.
At this time.
Yeah, right.
At this time.
Yeah, I think a full-blown, for me, I think, going back to, I think what's already been said, I think for me, doing an exterior drawing or rendering of what it could look like might be premature at this stage of the game.
I'm worried that it locks us into what a public perception of what this is going to be. And then
At
we'll
least
kind of-
emotionally.
Emotionally, at least, yeah.
Sure. And then
Commissioner Parker?
Let the record show that I completely agree with Commissioner Hensley. I think she's spot on here.
What's the date today?
Yeah, it's water.
I don't mean, is that West Virginia water? I don't want to spend another dime on this project, another second of staff time until we decide to do this. I think it was former city manager Mike Jordan who would talk about a decision architecture, and I think there's one right at the top, and Tracy's saying that, and that's whether we proceed or not. Once we make that decision, then other decisions will fall from it.
Yeah.
But let's focus on that. It's a question of whether we proceed or not, and then if we don't, we would have spent money again on something that didn't happen. And if the answer is yes, I think Todd's absolutely right. It's going to be a function of where the footprint of the building is and how much money we have, whether, I hadn't thought about a stucco exterior, Todd.
I
but
don't want stucco either.
See, now that's stuck with you, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Don't worry, Roger.
But
We're not
I do
talking
want to say,
about-
Mr. Chair, I appreciate the way you run the meetings and that you ask these questions, because it is on record that we made a decision overtly that instead of just having it by default. So I think that this was a worthwhile discussion, and when people say, well, where's a picture of it? Well, that's not where we are. If we get to that point, but why spend any more money if the answer is no?
Mr. Chairman? I was just going to say, I would encourage any library enthusiast in the community to visit the Sherwood Library. I think that gives you a sense of a library on the main floor, which incorporates a great deal of light, and yet about half of the second floor is for city. And I think that, even though that's not probably the design we'd end up with, I think that gives people a sense of how they can work together. And I was quite impressed with that field trip we went on, and so those are my
Yeah,
comments.
it's exciting. All right. Yeah, and for myself, as much as I like things concrete, and I think voters do like concrete, they don't like to vote money without knowing exactly what they're getting for. I do personally appreciate the purity of answering the ideological question and not causing an emotional tie to a particular implementation. And we have a ways to go yet before we can firm up a particular site and implementation. On the other hand, I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm excited and I'm confident, based on the agreement on the City Council and this commission to go forward on the project, the excitement that's in the town, that the excitement will build as the vote comes. And so I'm personally confident of the outcome, looking forward to it. We don't need a motion. Just by consensus, it sounds like everyone is pretty well going, yes, just leave as is, don't proceed with drawings yet. If an affirmative vote occurs with the electorate, then we'll proceed with the public design process, Greg?
Perfect, yeah.
All righty. Sue, is that okay? All righty. Everyone okay with that? Further discussion? We good?
I like you check with Sue.
Yeah. She's the record keeper. All righty. Thank you all for that. Next on the item is our Urban Renewal District Attorney is retiring.
Yeah.
And we'll turn that over to Greg.
Isn't that interesting wording? I just realized the
District
district
attorney.
attorney.
Yes.
I know, I didn't know they required district
Yeah.
attorneys.
There should be a comma.
But, yeah, as in your packet indicates, she's retiring, Jeanette Lahner's retiring effective March 1st. She has a lot of history in urban renewal, and so it's going to be hard to replace her, I think. But she did send me a couple of names, and of course I left them on my desk. But one is, I believe his name is Ben Johnston, or Ben Johnson. And she said he has got some experience in urban renewal. He's done it for Oregon City. He's not currently practicing urban renewal, but he's got some experience. The other name she gave me was Barry Elsner, Pam Barry at Barry Elsner. And that's, if you remember, that's where Chicago Nancy's from, is Barry Elsner.
Yep.
So telecommunications, I mean, the company does a lot of telecommunications. Pam was successful in fighting Quest over an issue of some telecommunications issue, I believe. It had to do with franchise fees, et cetera. So those are her two recommendations. I had lunch yesterday with the attorney who represented us on the sledge dryer. I was picking up some very sizable checks that were delivered to his office. And I told him that I would put his name out there too. He has land use background, but not urban renewal specifically. I know him more than I know the Mr. Johnson or the Barry Elsner, and I like working with him, but very, I think, knowledgeable and comes up to speed quickly. But I've talked to other people, and the recommendation is Barry Elsner, but I would leave that up to the commission to decide which way you'd like me to go, and if you'd like more information. And, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that we were paying Ms. Lauderant $250 an hour as her rate, but to date, we've only paid, I think, $1,700.
Yes.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
So our theory is, ask forgiveness, and we'll just do it, and so. So it's not a lot of money. We don't go to her a lot. There's not a lot of need.
Very good. So I heard you say that you'd like some direction.
Yeah.
Are you interested in just off-the-cuff direction, or were you interested in pursuing some interviews, or?
Yeah, let me back up a little bit. In fact, I'd forgotten when the previous attorney, and I forgot who that was prior to Jeanette, she worked for a big firm downtown, and she was leaving the firm. And the firm said, well, we have somebody else who can fill in. And I think at that point we said, well, we want to maybe take a look at other options. And my memory's not so good that I remember how we did that. I think we went out and talked to several attorneys. And I remember interviewing Jeanette. She's the only one I remember. And I think I've spoke to you, Commissioner Dale, about, how this process goes. Is it the commission that hires, or is it me? And I'm looking for some direction on where to go, how you want me to do that, whether you want to interview, whether you want me to interview and have maybe a representative from this body sit in on that, or I'm just looking for how you would like me to proceed.
Yeah. And my take on that question is that Greg is our sole employee, and this falls in his domain. However, if he would like some interviewing help, I'm glad to have his help. It's kind of nice to spread the blame a little bit on hiring decisions.
Well, then I nominate Tim to.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, urban renewal is a pretty unique animal. I didn't know they were making any new urban renewal lawyers in the state. What is our arrangement with Jeanette? Is she of counsel, on contract, retainer? I don't know what our, how we do what we do with her.
We have a personal services agreement, and it's just an on-call. When we call her, she hits the button and starts the timer. But it's basically, it's a personal services agreement. When we have a question that would require legal advice, we'll give her a call. And we try to make sure that not everybody in the world is calling, you know. It should go through one or two people.
Well, my thought on this is that I was surprised that our costs to Jeanette are so low, but that could well be that when we call her, she already knows the law. She has it memorized. It's a complex legal practice, but it is a very confined set of ORSs. So I would be more inclined to go for the high price spread at fewer billable hours. But here's the only, and my vote, Mr. Chair, is that this is an administrative function for our sole employee of the URD to handle. But here's an idea. We've been talking about how our city attorney functions and whether we want to move into a model of more efficiency with our legal affairs. One thing might be to include him on the interview panel and have that as a reciprocal relationship where he can be a pre-filter to requests that go into the attorney, so to the extent that he can shorten the amount of actual research time done by the contract attorney is, and conversely, that he can gin up some of his skills in the urban renewal as well, so that some of this information transfer can be done in-house.
Mr. Chair, I think we need to check the calendar to see how the planets are aligned, because I had the same question that Commissioner Parker had, as well as the same thought about Joe. So I would be, I would say that would be where I would be, is to have Greg be the interviewer with Joe included, and honestly, I would consider having you as part of that interview panel as our chair. So as far as all of us being present and doing an interview process, I don't think that that's necessary. But I had the same question. I didn't know if it was something like with Joe where we had to post it as a job and whatnot, but you're saying it's personal services contract, so that would be your domain. But I think I would like to see the interview process include Joe and Chair Dale.
And I spoke with Joe this afternoon about it, and he actually favors Barry Elsner as well. So, very well-known name and
Very well.
work well with governments. and so-
Yeah, Chicago Nancy, can
Yeah.
Chicago someone else.
And she has experience with URA. Is that right?
Jeanette did. We would have to check with Barry Elsner to find out if they have
It
someone.
seems like we'd want to find somebody that just could come right in and start right off, without having to go through a kind of an educational process to take all that time to get ready.
Yeah, I liked the attorney we had with the sledge dryer, but we would want that experience already in hand, yeah.
To a lot of credit to Greg as well, is we've not had to call on Jeanette probably as much because of Greg's background in, URA issues over the years and whatnot, so a lot of that stuff has been circumvented by Greg, so we haven't had to hit the timer and rack up that bill. I think the biggest expense for her probably in the last year and a half has probably been her coming,
Travel time.
a couple, 9 months ago when we had her, that was probably the biggest expense we've had for her, because most of the time you're able to root that out, and we're not calling her ad hoc to beat the issues, but I agree with, I think you and Joe and Chairman Dale could probably handle the process.
Plus, I do go to Joe in a lot of cases to see if he can give me some information on that. One of the things, in some instances, you probably have to watch though, because Joe represents the city like on an IGA, the IGAs we did, and Jeanette represents the agency when we did the IGAs, and so there would be a conflict, I think, if he was doing both of them. But those situations are few and far between.
Need our own lawyer.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't foresee Joe, maybe I could be wrong, moving in and being the attorney for the agency as well. I just think it's a good backup or a good exposure piece for him, is, him being, part of our job is developing his role and exposing him, to different options or different avenues that he's just isn't going to come across as the city attorney. I think is a good idea to have, and it's, for us to call on him for counsel, it'd be nice to have some of that exposure for him and that background to pull from, so to your point.
We're going to have to surely make sure that when we get our next city manager, he has as much experience or more than Greg, so he can...
Thank you. They're out there.
Alrighty, and likewise, I have learned sometimes the expensive way that going with the higher priced expertise is often better. I've discovered, all due respect to the audience, nothing tends to rack up the legal bills like a lot of research and bringing the attorney up to speed. So, sounds like we have consensus. It's an administrative issue. We'll direct Greg to go ahead and pursue it, encourage him to use Joe, and welcome to use me, and you decide whether you want phone, Skype, or coffee interviews. Just let us know.
Okay. And then I'll set up, you want to do 2 interviews?
I leave it to your judgment.
Barry Elsner, okay.
Yeah.
I think
Barry Elsner and Mr.
It sounds like
Johnson
the
got-
odds-on favorite to start with. anyway.
Yeah, I think we're going to maybe not have the sledge dryer attorney.
Right.
Just thought I'd let you know that that was an option.
I'm sure he'd like a different name.
Yeah, he probably would not like to
SD.
be known as the sledge dryer attorney.
All right, agency okay with that? Yes, sir. Good, thanks. All righty, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have urban renewal updates. And Greg, I'm going to start with,
Actually, yeah, why don't I start, there's something I wanted to talk about. Last week or the week before, I don't know when it was, there was an issue that was going around about out-of-state travel and Main Street program, et cetera. So I want to give a little background on where that came from. It started with this fiscal year, this budget. I had asked staff to eliminate all out-of-state travel. And, our budget is not expanding, it's contracting. So the idea was to hopefully save a little money. Well, after doing that, one of the things I did not do, and I should have, is went back and looked and see what effect that had on the budget. It actually had very little, because the staff still goes to in-state training, and they have some travel expense and pay for conferences, that type of thing. And I think it's, just let me say it, I think it's very important that they have that. We have a lot of staff that require certification, and they need continuing education credits to get that. So I think that training is important to keep their certifications. Sue, the only place she can get her training is in Washington, in the Northwest, is up in Washington for city recorders. And I don't think it's given anywhere else. That's where they do it. And so that eliminated her ability to go to that training and get it. So after the emails, I looked at the budget and realized that we haven't saved that much money by eliminating that, because it was put into state travel. So I sent out an email last week and said, if you still have money in your budget for travel and training, and you can keep it at your current level, go ahead and do it if you think you need to travel out of state. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's important, and I think, I wouldn't mind the council talking about the strategic need to do that and how to do it and how to go about it, maybe specifically for the Main Street program, since it is part of the urban renewal. And so one of the things I was remiss in not doing was, when we did the budget, I didn't think of anybody except staff. So I did not report that at the budget meeting, that I had eliminated out-of-state travel, because I didn't think it affected anybody. So I think, that should have been done. Another thing I did not do was look at the budget after I'd asked people to take that out-of-state travel, and I didn't see at the time that it really didn't affect the budget. I didn't realize that until this issue came up last week. So I started looking at the travel and training budget, and was like, same amount budgeted this year almost as last year, within a little bit less, but not a lot. So anyway, I wanted to bring that to the commission, see if you wanted to discuss that, and maybe the strategy about, out-of-state travel and what your feelings are.
Chairman Dell, a couple of things, Greg. I think, conversation that Councilor Parker and I had about just with staff being as, we've thinned our numbers. And so staff is expected to do much more with less. And I think we as a council and as a commission body have always committed to, if the last thing that we should cut is our development of our staff. If we're going to continue to expect to have them do more with less, we've got to still invest back into them versus if we can't add positions to support them, then we've got to give them the tools to be able to do the job the best that they can. And the continuing ed for a number of our people is important. We have to have that. That's a legal issue, and keeping them up to date with their skill level. So I think, I don't know, I don't think it's an apology piece or an oversight. It's your purview of the budget to do what you need to do to present us with a balanced budget, I mean, both as a council and as the commission. So I think we, in terms of, yeah, our development will come, and we do that through much heated conversation sometimes over issues and whatnot, but I think you have to take care of staff and their budget, and if we get to go, great. If we don't, I don't know how much skin off our nose that's really is for us to not go to certain things. I think looking at the strategery piece of, something like Main Street, I don't know, that's where I've got to look to you and to our Economic Development Department to say, what's the value add? Is it important to send the two of them, Jamie and the liaison role? What is that return on our investment to do that? And, you and I had a conversation of when's the state one? Is there a way that we get more of us represented at the state one to be able to support the Main Street program and its growth? So I don't know. That's, again, a yielding piece to you guys as a staff to say, there's benefits to doing both, or has it become an every other year kind of thing? And Jamie was great. I cornered her at Place to Be one day, and I asked her, because this issue was a topic of conversation, and I said, okay, so this year's Main Street Conference is in Detroit, and I said, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like, this has got to be a good one to go to because the agenda is fraught with great information, there's a lot to get from it, and 1 being, I wouldn't even get the DVD. She put this at about an 8, in terms of what was on the agenda and whatnot. And so last year was New Orleans, and I said, well, where'd that fall? And she's like, well, that was like a 6, and so, what's that?
Good memory.
Well, because it's, we sit up here, and we have to make, previous life, there was, working for a big coffee company, they would occasionally come down at the halfway through the third quarter of the year and say, there's no more travel for the remainder of the year, so unless it was absolutely necessary for business practices. Is that the situation we're in? If we're contracting, not expanding,
Right.
maybe. So that's where I've got to trust you guys to tell us what's important, what's going to be the return on our investment, and what comes back to us to be able to implement from an economic development standpoint, from a Main Street standpoint, that's going to bring that return on investment. So, if the money's there to do it and we can do it, it's going to be impactful, and this is the one to go to. And do we know what next year's is?
No, they
Okay.
don't announce, I don't think that they announce even at the meeting, it's later on in the year.
Okay. So, and this may be a conversation that comes about next year, and it's maybe a year-by-year, case-by-case situation. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I think you did your job and how you needed to present the budget and take care of it. If there's pieces in there that we, as the commissioners, want to see differently for this next budget year coming up, then I think that's a conversation piece we should have. And, is that a different scope of your letter, your budget letter to say, here's what I've asked to be eliminated, and here's how each department found that money. And then we can then battle back or push back to you saying, is this a have to do or a have to cut, or, and that's the dialogue I think going forward will probably occur. So that's just my, Michael's worth.
I look at the national, and I've got the program here, and I think it would be best to send more than one person, because if you look at this program, there's a lot going on here. And I haven't got the program, if anybody wants to look at this, and take a look. I haven't got the program for the Oregon Main Street Conference yet. I think that's usually, in the fall. So I don't have that program, I couldn't find it yet. So, but that one, you can see there's just a lot going on. So it's better to have, I think, more than one set of eyes on, what's going on. And I like the fact that a liaison or somebody goes instead of just staff, because you come back and I think you have that conversation with your peers on this body, either council and or URA, and I think it makes a lot of difference if you got somebody from the electeds on. And I think I've told a couple of you, one of the things that, like the League of Oregon Cities, one of the things city managers brag about is, I got more council members here than you do. So there. I mean, because you like to have your council there.
Sure.
Because I think as you go to those League of Oregon Cities, you find out that there's a little more to government than you might think. It gets pretty complicated, just a little bit, and Commissioner Parker's been there. I mean, he's worked for government agencies and knows that. But when I first got into this business, I was shocked at, what's going on and how to do things. And I loved it. I thought it was great, really. But still, it was real shocking what was going on. I mean, the complexity and everything, and the rules and regulations. And in private side, as you know, you make a decision and go forth. But in government, in a lot of cases, you make a decision and get slapped. And so, yeah. So,
Commissioner Tracy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I actually have a question to Commissioner Tracy, if that's funny. You make a good point about the League of Oregon Cities conference. They also have a series of classes. I know that when I started on the commission, I went to a couple of classes, as did Councilor Dale, and I think we all did the initial government ethics class at the very beginning. But I know that there's a series of other courses available, and council's training budget's kind of non-existent these days, and I'm fine with that because we need to do what's best for the city budget, and staff and implementation of the programs should be a priority. So my question is, given there's other opportunities for training that we're missing out on, and no offense to Commissioner Parker, but I'm wondering if maybe having the staff that's implementing what they learn isn't a better value add. I mean, sure, it's nice to have the liaison role attend things, but I'm just wondering where the priority is, if maybe Renata or somebody else that would be helping Jamie implement the program might be a better value add, given our budgetary constraints at this time. It's just a question.
Well, I would argue that you do help implement those programs in oversight of the budget, for instance, that type of thing. I mean, you look at those. You called me with a question the other day, and I forgot what it was. It was about some money that was spent.
I guess I should ask somebody else. No, I'm kidding.
No.
You forgot the question.
Well, I gave you an answer.
Okay.
But anyway, there was some bike racks. You remember that? Okay, you called me about bike racks.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
No, you see what memory I got. But see, I would argue that you do implement, and so it is important for the electeds to go and find out, what is important, and is this strategic in the way we want to go, because that's policy, whether we want to go forward with the Main Street program. I'm just using that as an example. You could also say, do we want to have in-house HR? I mean, there's all kinds of things, there's different ways to do that, too. So I'm thinking if the more knowledgeable you are, the more you understand whether we do or do not need the programs that we are currently responsible for.
Okay.
That's kind of my opinion, but...
Well, and those are questions that we get asked, and well, why is so-and-so doing that, and why is so-and-so doing that? So I wanted to ask the priority question and ask it on camera, so now everybody knows.
All right.
That's why.
So,
Thank you.
all right.
So I hear you saying you think there is value in sending a
Absolutely.
policymaker to this particular conference?
Yes, I do.
And do we have money in the budget to do that?
We do.
All right. So the next question we'd have to look to you on is who should go?
Yeah. Well, I think that's amongst you. I mean, Councilor Parker's been going to these, Commissioner Parker has been going to these, and so has some history. So that would be up to the body to decide that, I would think. And I think Councilor Parker said, I don't need to go. It's not about me. It's about the process and the program. I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
I believe that's what I
Yeah, the
heard.
last thing I wanted to do was get into a debate with Tracy on whether I should go.
Oh, wasn't the name? I wished someone else was the liaison, so I wouldn't have had to pick on that particular person.
It's going so well this evening.
The part of it that I would like to underscore, and let me speak on behalf of the program, on Robert Bitter having gone before, and whoever is going to be the liaison next year, and I think it should be the liaison, because it does require a few years to get up to speed on the program, and Jamie's right, last year's program was a little bit of a disappointment, but that was because of an organizational change, where the national organization was spinning out into a private nonprofit, and they were having a little difficulty picking up the pieces, and plus the conferences are managed by the host state, and they have been held in New England and the Midwest, and this was the first time that the Bayou sponsored a conference, and they approach organizational precision in a little different way than in New England. So sometimes things weren't exactly going as they should, but usually they are pretty precise. The thing that I think is important, and I saw this model with the ICMA, the International City Managers Association, and 3CMA, the Communications Managers, is that it's great to send a program person off to these programs and come back and say, I've got 1,000 ideas, and let's do all of them. But part of what I think the value of having a policy person is to say, we're not going to get to do all of them. And there's a political aspect to this as well. So in the past, we've divided up the policy versus implementation. I try and find the one or two things that I think will really make a difference. I talked a couple last month about the one that I wanted to work on, and that was the research showing that your best customers are those closest to your businesses, that the further you get away, the more expensive it is to bring it in this program that we're implementing, which is a rather low-cost sort of thing. That's one. And then the other, and maybe this comes from having spent the day trying to explain to a 17-year-old why poetry really matters. There are certain things of the heart that motivate you, and coming back from the Main Street Conference and seeing towns smaller than Canby doing tremendous things in terms of historic preservation and economic development, and many of them becoming self-sustaining. A town of 7,500 raising $200,000 each year at its pumpkin festival, where they light more pumpkins than anybody else in the world. And it started because they said, what have we got that nobody else does? So somebody joked saying, well, we got a bunch of pumpkins that we can't sell. And now they make $200,000 a year, and it funds the Main Street program and also all of the other city marketing. So for me, it comes back, and I hope for whoever is liaison next year comes back, as an advocate for the program. That the model is, and Tracy and I have talked about this, that we're going to move this off of urban renewal funds, we're going to spin this out and turn it into a 501c3. But part of that involves having good ideas and programs that can make money and keep it sustained. And that's a lot just to put on a staff person, I think. You need someone with the politics behind it to be able to go and. It's a different case for me to argue with Tracy than it is for a staff person. Let's just put it that way.
I think my pieces are good, yeah, and I think if the budgetarily we're good, I think, yeah, I think Jamie, if they've got it, and Jamie and Mr. Parker should have a great time in Detroit.
In Detroit.
I may need to find a way to finance
In April?
Mrs. Hensley there with her
Is
You
it
need
April?
protection, Mr. Parker.
self-defense.
Is it April?
I may bend my views on it.
It's in May. There might be, all the snow might be gone by May in Detroit.
Maybe.
Unless they're in their fifth year.
Snowmageddon?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sounds like we're, everybody okay? We'll
Yeah,
Go ahead and.
I'm the liaison for Parks and Rec, and I think there's a meeting next year in Hawaii, so I'm excited.
It's in Aurora.
Is it
Aurora, Hawaii, or Aurora, Oregon?
Let's see the conference notes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we need to be sensitive. The public always has a skeptical and sensitive perception about out-of-state travel. Detroit in May is... Quite a perk. I'm not so worried about that one, like Orlando in January or Hawaii in
Yeah,
February, but...
Sure.
I also heard our administrator say that he is craving some input. We're coming into the budgetary process as to the encouragement we would like to give him as he prepares the budget. Do we want to give him permission that on conferences, events, training, that he feels it is important to have a policymaker there, that he put that into the budget that we'll be seeing soon?
Well, Mr. Chair, maybe is that something that we would want to involve the Urban Renewal Budget Committee on? Do we just want to do an ad hoc thing today? I mean, that's kind of a...
I just don't want to set him up for if we're cranky about that.
Why should it be any different this year?
Yeah, that's true. That we come back and...
But you're talking about other conferences aside from Main Street? Is that what you're saying?
Main Street
Yeah.
and others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think every year we budget it for the League of Oregon Cities for sure, at least in-state, so I think we budget for 7 members to go. And I don't think
Eugene this year, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's Eugene.
Is it Salem?
Yeah.
It was last year, I think.
Yeah, but it changes cities, so I think it's Eugene. I was
Yeah.
hoping for Ben. but it's
It's
Eugene.
Portland this year, right? Or, I mean,
Portland, the year before it was Salem. I think I heard them announce it as being Eugene.
all right.
Bob's been musical.
What else?
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think it's appropriate, I think as you're looking ahead, from a budget standpoint, I think, at least for this particular body, that, yeah, I mean, I don't know how many other, it's usually just economic development pieces that seem to be,
Yeah.
out of this body that are making, junkets to, for the purpose of economic development and whatnot. So I would say, yeah, we need to plan for it. It's one of those things that we find out that next year's in Oklahoma City and we have no desire to go, then we roll that to the next year, Nothing against Oklahoma City. I'm sure it's a beautiful place. I've never been there, but
But if Jamie looks at the program and it rates a 4,
Yeah,
then she
then
can save the
call it
money for
cash
the
carryover.
following year.
yeah. So,
Tim, what I'd suggest is that we have this discussion on the city council side.
We do.
And that, because our span is much greater. Here we've got
It's very focused.
pretty narrow band. But I think the advice would bleed over to urban renewal development. For example, I think the discussion is, do we want to establish council goals instead of saying, instead of getting into the weeds and saying travel, no travel, over 2,000 miles, this sort of thing, of saying that we want to have a certain percentage of the budget for staff growth and enrichment, and that we peg it at a percentage, and then within that, it's a qualitative decision, instead of us helping him pick and choose. But I think I'd rather take it from a policy standpoint. I'm saying we want to invest 1% or 1/2 of 1% or whatever it is that we want to invest, and say that this is what we can afford to invest in our program staff. And then from that, come up with some guidelines, and then leave it up to our administrator to use their judgment on it. But that's the discussion I'd like to have on the city side.
You okay with that, Mr. Mayor?
absolutely. Jotting that down now.
That's good. Okay, yeah, I just want that discussion so that when the budget process comes up, that half of the budget committee is willing and able to speak in support of the goals that we have. Perfect. And help defend it. So, does that make sense? All right. Okay. And I think that answered all the questions you brought up. Do you have anything else on that topic?
I do not, thank you.
All righty, so next update we have is
That would be from...
Renata?
Always love her handouts.
My apologies for the lack of the written update in your packets, but I was at a economic development conference getting professional training, so.
Any place warm?
Irvine, California.
Okay.
But it was only 60 degrees, so
All right.
not that bad.
Only.
And raining part of the time.
You wearing to your ankles in snow?
No, but I brought it back. So just a few things to flag for you. Coming up next Wednesday is our Canby Industrial Forum. It will be at Dragonberry Produce this time, starting at 7:30. The program starts at 8, and it'll be focusing on penetrating new markets. We thank Amy Nguyen at Dragonberry for offering her facility. This is an ongoing partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. Hopefully you can be there if your schedule allows. Secondly, I believe that our city administrator briefed you at the city council meeting last week about Grimm, but in the Canby Herald, there was a more detailed article for you. Just wanted to provide the feedback that the location scout was very pleased with the Canby location, and especially appreciated the cooperation from our Public Works team, including the park supervisor as well as the wastewater treatment team, for allowing them to park and make the Frisbee golf facility accessible, and I believe they also offered the use of a tractor. So it was a great experience for them. The episode will be playing in early April, and let me make sure I get that on your calendar. April 4th at 9 p.m. on NBC. You can see Canby doubling, I believe, as a forest in Montenegro, and there'll be violent death of several enemy combatants, so it should be an exciting episode. And the location scout also said that they really liked the Eco Park Frisbee Golf Course setting, and so it's possible they'll be back. So that's exciting as well.
Can you remind us of that time again?
That would be on April 4th, which is a Friday evening, at 9 o'clock on NBC.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's grim, you shouldn't have to be reminded, you should watch it.
Oh.
I should just be burned in.
Grim.
I shot my cable TV, so I'm a little behind.
So, the next piece in your packet is a screenshot of our new, updated Canby Development Atlas. And as you can see, there's a lot of different maps that are available to developers or businesses that are looking to find out the details of Canby. And we continue to build on that inventory. Next up, we'll be adding a map of all of the vacant land in the city. And we'll also be adding a map that talks about where employees at our companies could find the basic amenities that they need: gas stations, pharmacies, grocery stores, that kind of thing. That may double also as a tourism information piece that we share with the chamber and other tourism venues. So we continue to develop that with our great interns that we work with through the Clackamas Community College GIS department. The last piece in your packet is a prototype of Greater Portland, Inc. It's one of the benefits of our partnership with them. They're working with all of the cities to develop a community profile that will be available online and that they'll also use in their responses to project leads and business recruitment efforts. It's a standardized approach so that every community has an equal presentation to all of their children are loved equally. None is better or different than the rest. But it is an attractive format and provides information that's targeted toward what a site selector or a business looking at the region would be interested in. So I'll be working with the Greater Portland Inc. team to develop the best possible presentation for Canby over the next month or so. Just want to let you know that was coming. And then one last piece, the community response team will be meeting. They meet quarterly, and I'm trying to pull together a meeting for the end of this month. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you.
All right, any questions for Renata?
I've got one off the script. What's the sense out there in terms of the economy? What are people saying? What's the buzz?
One of the things that we talked a bit at the national conference as well, so it's very helpful to get the national and global trends. It's an international association as well. There's definitely an increase in reshoring or onshoring. Manufacturing companies that had taken their production to China and Mexico, other places, are starting to take a hard look again at coming back to the United States, so that's an exciting trend. There's also an increase in foreign direct investment. Investors are flocking to the safe harbor, which is the United States, so there's an increase in money available for projects that hasn't been as available in recent times. So it's an exciting time. There's also an increase in investment in equipment that is high value to increase efficiency. So there's been a lot of change in the downturn, and the trends are definitely increasing toward more industrial development, more advanced manufacturing, more customization. 3D printers are an exciting new opportunity.
Very much so.
Very encouraging. Definitely a national and regional increase in activity.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'd also like to thank Renata and the city staff for engaging on this industrial forums, and in particular,